Justus, I really appreciate you hopping on. It has been literally years since we've last seen each other face to face, so it's been a hot minute. But I appreciate you joining to dive into all things youth development, Young Brothers Academy, all the things you have going on. Super exciting. But just to kind of kick things off, I want to give people a much better understanding of who you are, where you come from, what your background is. So if you wouldn't mind, let's start there. Just give a background on who you are, and we'll then proceed from there accordingly.
Got you. So Justus Cox from Greenville, South Carolina, born and raised. We talk about upbringing. I've seen both sides of the tracks. You know what I'm saying? Understanding what poverty is and understanding, how to use education to maneuver and not serve it, to get out of it, call it what it is. Education, I played basketball while in high school, but education was really my way out. I went into Anderson University by way of Call Me Mister, which is an organization to increase the male teacher retention rate in the classroom. And so I went to Anderson University, got my bachelor's, my bachelor's there, also my master's. I got my master's in administration from there. So I taught for a while, and then I was assistant principal for 2.5 years. And December of 24, I resigned to launch my own business, Ignite Youth Development, and it brings us here. And so that's a few seconds to try to, encompass the journey, but it doesn't really do it any justice, no pun intended.
Well, that might, no pun intended. That might be the best introduction bio that anybody's ever given, frankly, in that condensed of a time frame. So kudos to you for that one. But there's obviously a lot to unpack and unravel too. We actually met in the political scene while we were still in college. And I forgot that you went to Anderson. For whatever reason, I had in my mind that you went to Winthrop for some reason. I think we were just around Winthrop a lot, but went to Anderson, and we met in college while working on Ben Carson's campaign. And there was a lot of good lessons that were learned there. I got to know you super well. Once again, just great time and great experience in our lives for both of us. But I got to better understand how passionate you were about and are about youth development, specifically at the time, all the organizations you were a part of. But now, 10 years later, dang,
get it going, man.
Yeah, 10 years later, you're still doing the same thing. You're still discussing this. You're still passionate about it, and you also have some kids. So we just break that down just a little bit? I don't yet have children, but you have some children now. So
you probably hear them in the background as well. I had to close the door. They feel like they're entitled to my office space, so you might hear them back in a few.
I'm pretty sure they're entitled to all of your things at this stage of life. So
yes, sir.
So as it relates to youth development and Young Brothers Academy, let's go ahead and just kind of dive into it. When did you form Young Brothers Academy, and why was this your where you were spending the majority of your focus and your time? Why this organization?
Most definitely. So I had a chance to go to Ghana, West Africa in 2018. And in 2025, I'm still processing it to this day. And so one thing I really got from that trip in Ghana was just our ability to create. And for young African American men, a lot of times their story here in America, when we're in school, it begins with slavery. And I began, and that was my introduction as well. And then you start to see how, before colonization, before, African Americans were brought here from Africa, how they had their own systems and traditions, how, it was leaders in the villages and things like that. And so I wanted to be that kind of liaison, for young Black men here in upstate, because when you don't really have an identity, people can give you one and you play into it. And so in 2018, it was always in my heart to start, an organization for young men, because people were there for me. But I ran into one of my friends at a party, and he was like, "Hey, bro, we got to do something for the youth. We got to do something for the youth." I was like, that's already, been cooking inside my brain. So let's go. So me and two other dudes got together. We sat down. We strategically planned it out. And that was 2018 is going on 7 years. And it's been a blessing. Our 3 E's are education, empowerment, and exposure. We really feel like with those 3 things, you really can change the world. And we work with middle and high school young men. And the thing we realized over these 7 years was, what skills do they need to self-sustain, beyond us? And that's when we delve down even more. The 3 things we focus on now is being able to be accountable, taking initiative, and consistency. We definitely feel like just narrowing in, those are skills as men we need, because it's not always, being able to change a tire, which is good, or the tie. Can you show up when you need to show up? Can you be a man of your word? And can you not just do it one time? Can you be great consistently? So those are the core values, we implemented in. And like I said, it's 2025 now, and it's been running and taking shape of its own. So yes, sir.
That's awesome.
All right, real talk. Whether I'm gearing up for a tough workout or preparing for an episode of the Cameron Brown Show, I need to be locked in. And that's where A-Bomb Energy comes into play. This stuff isn't just another energy drink. It was actually created by an Army Special Ops combat medic who wanted something better, something that actually helps you think clearer, focus longer, and retain information, not just give you a quick caffeine spike. And I can tell you, it really works. I've been drinking A-Bomb before I hit the gym, and it's like flipping a switch. My focus is on point, my energy is steady, and I don't get that crash afterward. Same when I'm recording this podcast. I need to be sharp, engaged, and A-Bomb helps me stay in the zone. Plus, it actually tastes great. So if you're looking for something that gives you a real mental and physical edge, go check them out at abombenergy.com. And when you order, just type Cameron in the notes so they know that I sent you. Trust me, you're going to feel the difference.
So this is your main focus now. It's obviously your baby, but this is your main focus now. What does it look like on like a day-to-day basis for you in working with these young individuals? Is it all over the place?
Thank God we have a team now. Most recently we adopted our CPA, and that's been a life changer. Initially, I was doing all of it, and that's not my cup of tea, so I'm pretty sure mistakes were made and it wasn't perfect. And we talked off camera, when I approach people for grants, when I ask for money, I want to make sure everything, is in line and to the T.
Yep.
And it's professional. And so a godsend, our CPA, our finance director, came in from day one, getting our records, putting it together from 2018 to the day, building that story. So that's been a blessing. We also have, a guy that's focusing on mental health for our young men. And he also deals in substance abuse. And so being able to have, that ally, not only for our kids, but for their parents as well, just different resources. We have our community outreach person. He's been plugged in, and so I don't have to be the voice by myself, cool. So he's been taking charge in that as well. And so we got different people in different roles. So my day-to-day doesn't look as crazy. My day-to-day now is just pretty much on the executive side. I'm answering emails, being the face, showing up, in different places, and just making sure that we're holding out the vision that we set out, we wanted to do.
I love it. When you think about focusing on the youth and the individuals that you're targeting, right? What is your target group of individuals, and how young are you starting with these younger individuals?
Definitely, and our motto it's been the same, but we've been more vocal on, who we are targeting, because a lot of people can look at mentor organization as a dumping ground for troubled kids, and that's not who we are. We're not a magic factory. You send your kid to us, and then a drastic transformation happens. That's not what we do. And so being able to get that narrative shot down and get a true narrative out is one thing. But we're looking for young men, middle and high school, that's willing to lead, that understands that they have a call in their life. They just need to be shaped and molded, because they have to want it, and you being a troubled kid, yes, YBA can help you develop and expose you to certain things that hopefully you can change. But if you don't want it for yourself, everything that we're giving you, everything that we're trying to plant inside of you is not going to mean anything, So we're really searching for young leaders that we can help develop.
I feel like this is like the hardest thing in education and or youth organizations is we're talking about finding individuals that are able to be molded or led, or they desire to be leaders. How are you all going about like finding that? Like, how do you know when that kid, that individual is actually a good fit for the organization?
They already taking initiative, pretty much. They're already, trying to find areas to serve. They're already, seeking out opportunities, to excel at a young age. And no, it's not mama making me be here. I want to be here. So through our application process, it was free, but now we put a price to it just to get that investment. Not only from our youth, but from our parents. Because when you got money behind it, you move different, and so, but just really looking at our young people that's already out here, not showing out in school, not saying that you can't change and, but we were not looking for kids who constantly, making wrong decisions. We're looking for kids who are serving in the club, that are on sports teams, because that's another form of leadership. That's running different clubs at school. Like, that's what we're looking for. So they're not, necessarily, YBA is benefiting from having them. We want both to be beneficial. But the organization is great because they're in it. Not they're great because they are part of the organization.
Got it. I feel like there's just like growing up, and I look back on it too, all the individuals that really could have benefited from an organization like this. And you think about it too, and a lot of individuals that I knew that maybe didn't have even the initial, I don't know how much it costs to apply, right? But the amount of money that could,
so
right. But even I say this too, back at the time, people thinking about putting down $50 or $75 might have been like, wow, how do I know that I'm going to get a lot of return out of this organization, or how I know this is going to be great for my kid, that sort of thing. But there were always other people that were willing to sponsor and support and be like, hey, I've identified this individual. He would be a great fit for your organization. I want to go ahead and cover his $75 application fee. Do you get a lot? I mean, is that starting to happen more and more with the organization?
Yes, and I hate it.
You said you hate it?
Hate it. Only because at the same time, like, say, I want to sponsor somebody, but at the same time, that parent still has to be invested, and if they're not putting any skin in the game, and somebody else is covering it, then it's not the same field. And I completely understand people not having $75. Let's be real. I understand, but we find money. We find ways to get resources other ways, and so let's treat this same organization. And I don't want to go off into my soapbox, but one thing about Young Brothers Academy and any organization I work with, it has to be a standard set. We don't go into certain places dressed any certain way. If you're going to dinner at a 5-star, you're not wearing sweatpants, and you're not going to argue with the person at the front, because of that. You're going to fall in line because it's the standard that's already been set. And so for us, like, we have to set a standard. No, this is not a dumping ground for troubled kids. No, this is not a you drop your kid off and leave. No, you got to put some skin in the game too. You can't say you want this for your son and not take actions for yourself. And so, yes, it's great to have other people to sponsor and see greatness in them, but we need parents invested as well.
Like, I'm not a parent myself yet, but you obviously know this too. It's like it starts with the house, and it starts with the parents, and it starts with the people that support that child. And whether you're a parent or not, it's very evident, right? Yeah. That is, they literally learn from you, and they're around you a lot. And frankly, they're around people at school and other organizations a lot as well, but they're around you. You set the tone. And so if you can't set that tone, then it's going to be kind of hard for them to join any kind of organization and be able to thrive in those organizations. But I feel like it sounds like, and once again, I've done a little bit of research, but you're explaining a lot more about it. But it sounds like Young Brothers Academy is a way for those individuals to take that next step and go from good foundation to really, really solid, like great foundation.
100%. And it starts with a standard. And like you said, I had it. You know, I was a part of an organization called Young Leaders Academy while I was in high school. And I ended up being a part of their board. And so having that experience, you know what I'm saying, in high school, think about, you know, our experience, you know, with Ben Carson. And that was a complete culture shock and a different exposure piece for me. But the nuggets and tools I was able to pull from it. And so it was only because I sought out, you know, those opportunities. And people, honestly, they saw potential in me and recommended me, you know, for certain organizations. But yeah, man, they gotta seek it out.
What's the vision? What's the ultimate goal with the organization?
For me is the young men that we are leading, coming back and taking our positions and our jobs. So it's like a cycle. You know what I'm saying? Yep. A never-ending cycle that's creating a village, or what I like to call an ecosystem of love, because that's really what it comes down to when we talk about a village and who is really there as far as resources. Yes, you know, venture out in life. Like Young Brothers Academy was created because I didn't want to sit on my hands while I was waiting for whatever my next that God had for me. You know, I can do this in the meantime, you know, and while I was teaching, you know, I was still there. So they can go off and do whatever they want to do, but still give back, you know, to the organization that gave to them.
Absolutely. I love that. I feel like people oftentimes set a goal as like a number or a certain number of individuals in the organization or a certain financial amount instead of thinking to like the longevity of the organization. This thing will last for hundreds of years if we can get the individuals that we train to then come up and take our spots. So I love it.
That's it.
You mentioned Ghana earlier, and you mentioned that was kind of a pivotal moment in your life. And sounds like a lot of your mindset, your approach to things, your thought processes, everything kind of changed after that trip. Is that right?
100%, man. 100%.
So let's get really, really real and for a second. What was it about that trip that changed everything for you?
So looking at history, one of my first time in Africa, and you know, anybody from African American descent, you know, lineage came through, you know, Africa. So my first time being back to a place where we wasn't coming back to, being able to visit the slave dungeons, where they kept, you know, the enslaved people in before they shipped them off to the different areas. That was life-changing and a spiritual experience. Just the conditions that they were in. And the majority of people who came out of Africa came through Elmina and Cape Coast. And those are the two dungeons, and that's in Ghana. And those are two slave dungeons we were visiting. So 9 times out of 10, my lineage came through those two slave dungeons. And while I was there, I did my African ancestry. And so I got my results back while I was in one of the slave dungeons. And so I did my father's side. And so it came back that I was Portuguese. You know, that down the line, my father was of Portugal descent. And now that tells you something. If you know anything about history, you know, when they invaded Africa. And so my bloodline began through, you know, rape. You know what I'm saying? The struggle. And so that was even more of a spiritual experience that I was learning through there. But also, just to go, like, we could talk about this point all day. What's crazy, the picture behind me is when I was in Ghana. But when we went, I was on a Fulbright Hays Scholarship, so we were there for 30 days. And the lady we went with, she let us see both sides of Africa. You know, she let us see what they show you on TV. You know, the slums are real. But it's also another side, right? And that's the side that's a little more affluent. Like we stayed in resorts, on the beach, beautiful, so we were able to see both sides of a one-sided story, and that was impactful for me because you look at the Feed the Children commercials or something with the flies on the belly of the kids. Like it's amazing what, a one-sided perspective can do for you, and even your belief system of who you are. And so not only that, because I was on the Fulbright Hays Scholarship, we stayed at the University of Accra, and that's the capital of Ghana. And we were there with professors, distinguished leaders in the community, and they walked around with their chest out. And, here in America, with our westernized governors, we'll look at that as being arrogant, and bragging and boasting. And I asked, one of the professors who we was with, why do they move as such? And he basically said, why not be proud of, your accomplishments? Why not be proud of who you are? And that took me back because here, with our thinking here in America, you got to be humble, 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 humble. You can't be proud of your accomplishments. You gotta kind of tuck your head in your neck a little bit, and that shouldn't be, because somebody may think you're arrogant or, I do feel like people can go overboard, being boastful, but they don't take away from being proud of what you accomplished. And it's crazy because now I feel like I have accomplished a lot, at a young age, but I'm still, not putting it out there and still kind of being humble, what I'm saying, instead of being proud of, the avenues God has blessed me to go through. And so to say all that, when I came back and I touched back on American soil, it was like, I got to go to work, you know what I'm saying? And so that's when everything hit the ground running, how we, like I said before, how we're put here to create. I can't wait for somebody else to create something that I feel like there's a need for. Why not us, And so it lit a fire in me. Like I said, 2025, that was 2018, and I'm still processing today.
I think there's something to be said about traveling in general. I mean, even traveling outside of your hometown, right? I mean, like I'm from Spartanburg, you're from Greenville, right? Traveling outside of the upstate is one thing. Traveling outside of the state is another. Traveling outside of the country is completely different. And we frankly, I mean, well, I'd say this, we're so blessed and spoiled to have as much as we have in this country. Like we can go to all these places and see all these beautiful things in our own country, but you don't get that true cultural experience until you exit the border, right? And you actually see and experience other people left, especially your better understanding your family lineage, which I cannot imagine how that experience was for you. And it sounds like it was amazing and life-changing, all the above. But there's so many times where I'll have conversations with people that have truly never been outside of the state or the country and just don't understand. I'm not taking that next step. So I wish that for every person, just the ability to go and be in other people in other locations internationally, and to literally feel what it's like to walk in other people's shoes for a day. You also mentioned too the two different sides of this, and I think about this oftentimes with like the media and how things are portrayed to us and how we're supposed to feel about it and think about it. And it's like no wonder we're so divided as a country and like just in general, because you're constantly bombarded with all different kinds of information, and you want to like support and be there for people of all different kinds of people, but whether it's an African country or Gaza or, Russia, Ukraine, like whatever it is internationally, like we've got plenty of that going on locally. But when you see this stuff and you're not there and you can't experience it and you can't see it, you have no idea. You're just being hit with information that triggers emotional responses. And you're just like, I don't know how to comprehend any of this when it's all different information and people are dying on all sides and it's terrible, but you also want to help everybody too. Yeah. So, I think about that often with people starting or building organizations like yours. It's like, hey, you have the ability to do this and you have the ability to help other individuals. Don't think so grand scheme or don't think so international. Like you frankly, you're not there. You're here, right? So focus on it locally because there's plenty of issues to focus on at a local level.
Plenty.
Plenty of issues. And so just to go back to Young Brothers Academy as well, with the need for let's go back to the building of a nonprofit in general. What have been kind of some of the positives, negatives, kind of the issue, let's say issues as it relates to building a nonprofit, and maybe what kind of value could you provide to people that are listening that are trying to build their nonprofit that would help them to build it quicker and or easier than the way that you did it?
Man,
Lessons learned, I guess.
Positives, which I will start with, is that we had a solid foundation, and a plan in place. And so, when I consult with people now, the first piece of homework I give them is an outline to really put their vision on paper. I always tell them that's the only way to get it from the spiritual to the mental to the physical, right? Is to write it down. And so I truly believe if you can't verbalize, and put it on paper, you're not prepared to go into any type of business, nonprofit, whatever it may be, if you can't verbalize, what you're trying to do. And so I had a powerful experience at Anderson University. I founded an organization called Connect, and it was to promote and celebrate diversity on the campus during the whole Trayvon Martin, that whole, social unrest going on. We noticed that a lot of our African American students felt disconnected, and would go to their rooms and wasn't involved because they didn't know how to be. And so we created an organization called Connect, and then it had momentum, and then you start going through growing pains. And then we had some people to visit our campus, and I was able to have dinner with him, another member of the organization, and he started questioning me on the organization, and it was certain questions I could not answer. And so he sent me a layout, just like I do with everybody else now. He was like, put it on here, but let it be a collective vision. Do this with your team. And so me and my team sat down and had it like 3 or 4 hours, just going through what we want to see and how to make it sustainable, and putting things on the calendar. From that moment on, bro, we took off. And it's beautiful that the organization is still there today, and that was 2016. So that's just amazing to see that they're still there. And so I say all that to say with Young Brothers Academy, because of my experience, while I was in college, I was able to make sure we were straight on paper of our vision, our mission, our goals, what we wanted to do before we launched out, to make it official. And that's why I truly believe it's sustainable today, because we had our goals on paper. We knew what we were shooting for. And the importance of that is that everything that doesn't align with, your mission and your vision, we're not entertaining, and it saves time and keep you focused. So that's been the positive, and to help us tell the story. We haven't received any major grants yet. And like I said, it's only because we haven't applied. But we're ready now, so we get ready to jump into that field. But, that's 7 years strictly off community support. Like, able to have galas every year, able to take our boys on trips. We was in Charleston this weekend, going to a youth conference, and the boys didn't have to pay for anything, So just 7 years of the community saying, we love what y'all doing, we're going to support, and we've been thriving. And so now we're going to add that other layer, so we can thrive some more. And I'll say the difficulties, which really aren't difficulties, but with our organization, it's just when you're dealing with people, you got to accept people for people. And so going to our parents, I really want to get them involved, because we can work with your young man all day, but he's going back home to you, so what skills are you cultivating to help this young man grow? So I'll say that's the issues we run into. I know a lot of organizations I talk to, they bring up funding, but it's hard for me to bring up funding when we're 7 years in and haven't needed a thing. You know what I'm saying? And so I really feel like if you have a clear direction, and you're really able to tell your story through that, people are going to support, and you don't have to rely on any government grants. It's funny because, when Trump was doing his thing, cutting or freezing grants, it didn't affect us. You know what I'm saying? And only because we were already self-sustained before, any of the freeze came. And so, not saying I don't want federal grants. I'm not saying that at all. Please send them our way. But, we was going to be good with or without them. And so that's why I encourage people to get your base first. So you don't want to be dependent on a grant to run your organization.
Well, I think that's it goes back to like the diversity aspect and having diversity in your revenue streams too, right? Small business stuff 101, which I know is not nonprofit, but still having diversity in your revenue streams and having support from multiple different angles, just in case. Because especially if you had, let's just say you had one major donor and that was your only revenue stream, that person passes away, something happens, then you're cut off. Then the organization dies. And I don't think many people think about that. They just appreciate it, and they're happy when they've got that big check coming in from that one person. But long term, that's not a great strategy.
Yeah.
So, but it's great for people to give money regardless of who they are.
100%. Please give.
And I know obviously at that point too, it's like, you'll take the funding to support the organization and grow the organization, but I think those are things that people don't really think about probably getting into a nonprofit. They just think, hey, we've got money coming in. This is great. But it's like, what happens in a year or two if that does change? So it sounds like you'll be applying for grants and doing other things here soon, which is exciting. For people that want to get involved, donate, so on and so forth, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, just visit youngbrotheracademy.org. It's places to donate. It's also places to sign up, for the newsletter. So if you just want to stay, in touch with what's going on, if you want to volunteer, you can do all that through that connect with us on the website. But it's youngbrotheracademy.org. Perfect.
And all that information I will obviously have in the description, show notes, et cetera, so people can click into that super easily. I kind of want to follow up with a question on people that are looking to start nonprofits and are looking to get into this space or build their own organization. You and I are pretty entrepreneurial individuals. You've obviously started a lot of organizations, some of which sound like they've thrived. Others maybe did kind of okay. What kind of individual, like if somebody says, hey, Justus, I want to start this nonprofit, or I want to do this, this, and this, what would be your first comment to them to kind of see if they're a good fit and see if it really is a good idea for them to go down that road?
The first thing I ask anybody trying to start an organization, is your organization already out there you can partner with? Like, there's no need to create something new. Like, I didn't want to start Young Brothers Academy. I started Young Brothers Academy because there was nobody doing what we was doing in the upstate, so, but there are organizations already here, and not everybody is called to start an organization. Some people are called to plug in and support and to uplift, organizations. So first, see if you can plug into somebody. It could be a scenario where you work with that nonprofit and you learn from them, and then you go start your own because you can see something you can do differently. But the first piece of advice I always give is to go see if it's already out there, and don't be so caught up of, I want this to be my organization and blah, blah, blah. See if it's already out there. See, can you connect and plug in and serve first before you go into building your own.
I love that. I feel like a lot of people don't start there too, right? And especially for those of us that want to build things and start things from the ground up, there's a lot of us that are like that, but there's also plenty of people that can support. There's so many organizations that are doing great things. Do you have a plan to expand into the rest of the state? Is that kind of the goal? Or are you thinking really focus on the upstate for a long time with this?
I would love to expand. But right now it's just not the season. Because like I said, if we expand, like I said, the standard got to be set, and I don't want to just expand just to expand and we water down, what we're doing. But make sure the model we have is solid and concrete, and then we can look at, exploring to different parts of the state.
Cool. You also brought up being spiritual earlier. You've mentioned that a couple of times. I just want to know what that means to you, because I feel like that's different for everybody. And this might take us completely off track off of the Young Brothers Academy. But what does being spiritual mean to you, especially at this stage in your life?
Oh yeah, God is definitely my source, 100%. I do consider myself a Christian, but not how it is. And I struggle with that, to be honest with you. We can be all the way real. because we see our political climate and we see what people support and don't speak up against. And it's like, it almost seems like we're serving two separate gods, at times, like, because what God says is what he says. And so, but I said, like, you can't let people and their mindsets and the way they think take you off course, for what you believe in and what you do. But for me, I was raised in the church. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, I was in the church. But around college, I stepped away. I really felt like, or that's also around the time you start to see the duality in people. And when we're being raised, they don't show you the duality of themselves. You only see one side. Like, for example, I remember being in church and the men in church, they'll be like, don't have sex before you're married. But all of them had sex before they was married, right? They didn't provide the context behind it. They didn't talk about, what did it do to you mentally, physically, and spiritually, giving yourself to different people. That's a whole nother conversation. And so around that time, I started to see the duality of people, and which is not a bad thing, but we got to talk more about it, especially with our youth, because they see it, and they can cause you to back away. They can cause you not to trust people. They can cause you to look at God a certain way. And so over time, I began to develop a relationship for myself. And so especially these past couple months, for sure, when I felt like God was telling me to leave my job, my job was paying me well, you know what I'm saying? My family was comfortable. My wife is a stay-at-home mom and been there since 2021, you know what I'm saying? So, but through these months, he's truly been sustaining and keeping us. And so, definitely God as my center and my source, and really trying to more so be a light, not trying to preach down people. But I really feel like the best way to live whatever you believe is how you walk and live your life. So you may not hear me loud about it, but you're going to see through how I move and how I live that this is what I believe.
Yeah, I think action speaks super loud. And I think that was been one of my biggest frustrations over the years too, is, I grew up in a very Southern Christian Presbyterian church. That church then became Methodist. I then experienced mega churches. Now I go to an Anglican church from time to time. I think your relationship with God is, is your own. You have to make it your own, and it is unique to every single individual. But to your point about the duality of man and what you see versus what they tell you or what they show you too, right? It's the same thing with social media too, which is why I love doing this podcast, because you're going to get a lot of real, raw human experience, hopefully, from this, and be like, well, they might post this or share this, but there's a lot more to that individual than just what they share online, right? And I feel like a lot of people do share because they want to shape your perception of them into something, when at the end of the day, we're all flawed human beings. And that God is, the perfect entity, however you want to say that. But it's, I think that spiritual relationship is just, it's a matter of walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. So
most definitely,
just walk the walk. And it's good to see you, frankly, walking the walk in a lot of different ways, and walking away literally from a well-paid job to do what you're meant to do is, as tough as that is huge. And obviously it's going to probably accelerate your next steps just that much quicker than what it would have. So that's all very exciting stuff. Anything else that's top of mind for you as it relates to the organization, what you've got going on, things that you think would provide value to folks that are listening in, so on and so forth?
Man, I just appreciate you, man. It's great to catch up. You're a little younger than me, but, we were able to travel together. I was able to see you, what I'm saying, to hang out with you for a little bit. And I did appreciate those times, those learning experiences. You were there for a pivotal part of the journey, you know what I'm saying? So that was beautiful. And you talked about Madeline, the people we were able to connect with along that journey. And now we're crossing here again. Don't feel like it's by chance or accident or anything like that. But Ignite Youth Development is my new for-profit organization that I started. serving teachers, serving parents, serving youth, still speaking. That's one thing I love to do, is just to go to different schools, organizations, tell my story, and try to plant seeds, and impact as many people, as God allows me to. But other than that, man, like I said, I'm proud of you. Keep telling stories, because it's needed, especially at a time like this. Voices like yours have to be amplified. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, I really appreciate that. And to your point, especially during a time like this, and in a place where we all seem super divided, but at the end of the day, that's not actually the case. Well, a lot of us are actually a lot closer than the media portrays it to be. So once again, proud of everything you're building. Really glad to be able to follow along this journey and support this. And I'm looking forward to sharing this one too and getting this out to some folks. And I can already think of a few people I'm probably just going to send your way. That would be a good connection to have in the upstate specifically. But if there's anything I can do to help, I'm always here. So I really appreciate the time and look forward to continuing the conversations.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely.